First Coast's most accurate forecast from the First Coast News Weather Team, certified by WeatherRate, sponsored by AC Designs.
Good afternoon. The weather team is letting me lead things off, which is kind of dangerous. What do we call this? Streaming? Is that it, Robert?
Yeah, it's this internet thing going on. First, we're going to talk about Severe Weather Awareness Week, hurricanes and flooding. But before we get into it, I want to ask you, Tim, about your tie. Absolutely love this. Let's put it on Tim.
Thank you very much. So as you don't know, Robert, I do like legit, right? Mm-hmm. So I wore this for today. Serious subject, although we would like to make it very clear that there's no hurricanes for us to worry about in the short term. This is actually an infrared satellite picture of Hurricane Matthew.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 2016. And it's because actually the woman who I love and am married to got tired of me talking about Matthew and so she made a tie of it. Actually, two different versions. So I have two different versions of Matthew. That was 2016. Which, and if we have time, at some point, if we have time, because I've been here a while, but in fact, someone asked me just this week, Tim, what as far as a broadcast meteorologist were the three most significant hurricanes for me? And I would say Floyd 1999, Matthew 2016, and then Irma 2017. And of course, you were here for both of those, right?
I was not here. I was in the business. I was around.
But that's right. But we should tell folks that who don't know. When were you forecasting in NAS Jacks? What years?
NAS Jacks, I started at 2019.
Okay. So just after those two.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So just after, fresh in everybody's mind. I was working on TV at the time, but not here on the First Coast. But two of those are kind of recent. My goodness, it just shows, we're getting.
There's a lot of energy out there, Robert. There is. There's a lot of. So I don't want to get us too off track. Robert's going to pretty much lead us. And so what are we calling this every afternoon? We should call it something.
We should call it something.
There's but what you can't see, folks. This is kind of like the Wizard of Oz, but behind the curtain. Is a young man. Would you call him young, Arnold? I mean, Andy. Would you call him Robert?
Yeah.
So Andy's running the scene. We're kind of looking for a title, but right now Andy's going to call it Severe Weather Week, and I should get more serious. So it is Severe Weather Week, and we've been covering the topics all week long. You and Lou were on this morning, right?
Yes. And this morning we talked a lot about insurance policies. That was one of the big topics. And even see here, this is a graphic from floridadisaster.org. So Severe Weather Awareness Week is this week every year where they go through a bunch of different, meteorological phenomena. Earlier we were talking about tornadoes. Tomorrow it's wildfires, extreme temperatures. Today it's hurricanes and flooding. And yeah, me and Lou were talking about this morning about, flood insurance and also just general insurance. But flood insurance is one that I think a lot of people, especially if they're new to Florida, Tim, that I think they might get caught off guard because, correct me if I'm wrong, if you get I'm sure each policy is a little different, but generally, let's say you have a storm surge and it impacts your home. Is general insurance going to cover that if they deem it to be the flooding from the surge being the main issue and not the wind?
As a majority, some cases, but certainly experience shows us that you better have flood insurance as well, which doesn't seem to make sense, but it is what it is. I mean, that's how it's been for decades. If we could pop that back up there, what I thought was really interesting and would be a good point, again, Robert, for people who are new to the area, the third point there, look at the numbers there. So just 1 inch of flood water can cause $25,000 in damage. And I guess to me, the point that it really makes is, I think we all understand that if we get the big one, that is the direct hit, it's catastrophic, right? Almost to the point to where, I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but your house is gone, okay? But what really happens more frequently is we don't get the big one, right? But we do certainly have many events, at least where we're threatened with 1 inch of floodwater. Some places, like for instance, Irma. Irma, because it came at us from I guess the point I'm trying to make is Irma because it came at us from the Gulf. It was not a storm surge event. I don't recollect even one building collapsing, right, like a complete loss from Irma. But many, many homes and businesses got about 1 to 2 feet of water. The point I'm trying to make is Irma didn't, like the movies, just blow the businesses or homes away, right? But you can imagine if 1 inch of flood water causes $25,000 of damage, 1 to 2 feet, that was a big deal. So I guess what I'm trying to point out is don't think, well, I'm not going to get flood insurance because what's the odds of us having the big one? 1 inch, that especially now with our more frequent and busier hurricanes, to me, that is like a major seller of, gosh, our family should probably have flood insurance.
Oof. And not just flood insurance, but I've seen, reviewing insurance policies. And I'll admit this, and I talked about it earlier, I'm not 100% sure what my policy covers right now.
Gets confusing.
It does.
Yeah.
You get the escrow, you get your payments, and it's all, I got a mortgage. It's all into that entire fund. But if a big tree fell on my house tomorrow because of hurricane wind versus flooding, I need to review that personally myself. And I'm sure a lot of people are in that same boat. But a couple other things, people want to remind of is make that disaster preparedness plans. One thing is reviewing your insurance policy, but making sure your family's businesses all have the right stuff. And the evacuation routes, as well as a disaster supply kit. It's something I have at home, and I think this goes back to when I lived in Japan, is a go kit. And I say Japan because we always had to worry about earthquakes. And it was like, grab a bag. We had all our important documents in there. But it is one of those things that I think that can ease stress.
I think I am so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that, especially because you have that experience, even though it wasn't hurricanes, but with the more frequent earthquakes. That's exactly why I try to convince my family to do it. That hopefully it won't happen, but it's one less stressful thing you have to worry about if, in fact, a hurricane watch is issued or a hurricane warning is issued. For those who are new to the area, I guarantee you, your adrenaline starts to flow, especially if you're here and you have one child in one school and one child in another school. You just, if you can have things already checked off that list, why not do it now? So I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, like it's less stress. You don't have to run the Publix or whatever grocery store you go to the day before a storm hits, because we all know that's a hot mess. Just try and stay prepared. Canned foods, water won't go bad on you.
Right.
You're going to have it ready to go. Plus things like passports. You're not trying to shuffle and get those documents. But let's talk about this here, Tim. Ooh, I got a nice little storm surge graphic. You know what is interesting about this graphic? I'm going to click the next button because here, this shows 3 feet, this shows 6 feet, and that shows 12 feet. And we like to show, the upper end of the scale here. But the storms that we've shown, actually, Andy, can you throw up the video we just had a moment here ago? Because the storms we've got here on the First Coast over the last 10 years, and you were talking about some of the worst ones here, they were what was the max surge during Irma in Jacksonville?
So the max surge with Irma was only about 3 feet.
Right?
Yeah, it was the rain from Irma. Now Matthew, of course, was a different because it came out from the Atlantic. Some folks down in Flagler and southern St. John's got about 7 to 8 feet.
Oof.
Yeah, and so that's why you did see some homes down there collapse because they're on the dunes and it undercut the dunes. But I do think that graphic makes another good point, that when we talk about the storm surge, we're just talking, folks, about flat sea level. And of course, in a hurricane, it's not flat. But what that means is the ocean level is that much higher, and then the waves are on top of that. Tough to really, I think, even conjure what kind of forces those are. But that's why we use the term catastrophic. The National Hurricane Center, as you know, Robert, they're very specific about their terminology. And so when they get to catastrophic, that's not us using an adjective. That is a scientific engineering term for the type of damage that significant storm surges cause.
Well, I guess on that note, too, specifically for Duval County, now if you go to firstcoastnews.com, we have an article on this, and we have all the county maps there. So we're just going to go Duval County here because Jacksonville, greater Jacksonville area, biggest population. And something of course, I know these zones here, Tim, but something that always kind of surprises me is how big Zone A is.
Yeah.
Here in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Like all of Black Hammock Island, Blount Island.
Well, look, in some
Fort
places on the west side of the St. Johns
Right?
River and west of I-95, we use that term River City by the Sea, which I do is one of the reasons this is a beautiful spot. Robert, I know your family has a boat to enjoy that river, but that also indicates that we are. A lot of us are not too high above sea level. And, in many ways, and I've heard people who are hydrologists, experts, say that really the St. Johns River, we should think of it more as a long bay, as opposed to a river. And it just to me points out the fact that truly, in fact, if you're wondering what do you call coastal, I would say anything from that shading eastward. And notice that shading goes well west of I-95.
Wow, that makes sense because all the St. Johns River leading up, well south of Jacksonville is tidal, right?
Right.
So it's pretty much a big old inlet. But yeah, it's like all the way down towards, we're talking about clear out near NAS Jacks or Zone A water.
Well,
evacuation zones.
with Irma, some of the worst flooding were the homes west of I-95, and it's because those homes were zoned to be allowed to build closer to sea level. So whether you're talking about some very old homes up there in the northwest side that are just like 2 feet above sea level, or even Ortega, there just west of Highway 17, there were some pretty significant properties there that flooded that far inland. Now, I do want to point out that Irma was a combination of both storm surge, which was about 3 feet, which as hurricanes go is not a big deal, but we had what I call a biblical rain. And what I mean by that is, and I say that, Robert, because I've given many a weather speech over the decades in which people were wondering or asked questions about how much rain will it take for the river to flood, because they move from other spots where rivers do flood. And I would make the statement that one of the nice things about the St. Johns, because it is more of a tidal river, that it would take an incredible amount of rainfall. And they would say, well, how much rainfall? And I said, well, way more than just a summer thunderstorm. And I would use the term biblical. Or another way to say it would have to be a 1 in 500 or 1 in 1,000 year flood. And I'm still hearing from state hydrologists who are debating about, was Irma a 1 in 500 year rain event or 1 in 1,000 year rain event. So when we talk about flooding, folks, or if you are here for Irma, remember at least half of the flooding from Irma, when I say half, I mean the level that the St. Johns came up, was at least half was because of rainfall, not from storm surge.
Well, I guess I'm going to ask you this question here, Tim. We got this question, and you're talking about Irma, so we're talking about storms past. But how about just even last year? What lessons have we learned from last year's hurricane season that could help us this year? And I'm going to ask you, and let's expand on that question, and even go back to the last few years, because you said the last few years it's been some of the biggest storms you've seen. What do you think are some of the lessons that we've learned here in Jacksonville on that?
What I'm hoping people have learned is that as bad as they were, remember all the significant hits were from the Gulf of Mexico. And as bad as Irma was, again, Irma was not the catastrophic storm surge event. That as bad as all of those hurricanes were, what I'm hoping people who maybe that was their first hurricane season, please don't think, we had 3 near-miss hurricanes, we're fine. No, as bad as a hurricane coming at us from the Gulf is, our big concern, what keeps me up anyhow at night, is at least when we see on long-term models something coming at us from the Atlantic, to me that is a totally different animal because of the potential to produce the catastrophic storm surge and also, the catastrophic winds, which we have not had in Jacksonville in modern history. Our last true direct hit from the Atlantic was Dura, and that was in 1964. We had 1/4 of the population. I think I've heard conservatively the assets or the value of property here is 10 times what it was back then. And the thing about Dura too is Dura reached its peak several hundred miles offshore and really came ashore more as like a Cat 2. So
we've never had in recorded history, at least since there's been a significant population here, we've never had a major hurricane, Cat 3 or higher.
Right, come at us, hit us from the Atlantic.
Wow.
Which I absolutely agree that climatologically there's reasons for that. And there's certainly reasons that South Florida and the Gulf Coast have a higher frequency of those kind of hurricanes. I personally think that's why our insurance rates should be much lower than those folks who live in those areas. But I guess that's more of an actuarial thing. So I agree that shows we're in a good place. And if we had time, Robert, we could talk about why that is. But that doesn't mean we have never had or we're not going to have a direct hit. So personally, for me, if nothing else, folks could learn what it was like to have a hurricane nearby. But please don't think, oh, I've survived 3 hurricanes. No. First of all, as you know, Robert, all of those hurricanes with hurricane force winds stayed well west and northwest of Duval. But again, they were Gulf hurricanes and not Atlantic. I mean, I suspect you feel the same way, Robert, that as much as I don't want anybody to be hit by a hurricane, when I see those long-term models and they start indicating, oh, it's a Gulf hurricane, not Atlantic, I start breathing easier.
It's such an amazing difference.
Yeah.
I mean, you go back to Matthew, which didn't actually make landfall, and that was one of the benchmark storms for this area. Now, you were here. I was not, but you were here, and what was it, like 50-mile difference, and like a slight wobble made a massive difference?
No, it was, and there were some official forecasts actually bringing it ashore. To me, it was a great study in where the subtropical jet max actually was. To me, its position is what saved us. But yes, I mean, we were confident once it got within 24 hours that it was going to make the turn. But confident and guaranteeing are two different things, right? And I can remember on the radar, and we were showing the western eye wall, and we were literally to the mile showing that as it was going by our area. And although we were forecasting it to stay 35 to 50 miles offshore, that was amazing to see that creature, if I can use that word, because it was so well defined. And of course, the biggest concern, folks, you don't want to be hit by any part of the eye wall, but of course, the worst part of the eye wall being that right front quadrant. And fortunately, even for those in Flagler and St. John's that were hit hard, fortunately, they were just off to the northwest side of it, not the that northeast quadrant. But gosh, that was close. So these are this year's names?
These are this year's.
Oh.
I haven't really. I see Jerry, Karen. It seems like they're getting kind of fun with these names here. Olga. Humberto sounds familiar. There was
Umberto. In fact, at least back then, or the last time I used it, which must have been 6 years ago, I think it was Umberto. So Gabrielle. So yeah, some of these, Aaron, some of these have been we've seen before, but there's a lot of new ones there, which shows you how many major hurricanes we've had.
Right, because remember, they for people at home that don't understand, if you get a major hurricane, serious damage, or just a general impact, they get retired. So when you get a lot of new names in here, it kind of shows, things are... we've had a lot of bad storms recently. We'll just say that.
Speaking of retiring, excuse me, I'm sorry, Robert. I'm gonna head off and get ready for the 11.
Okay.
And so Robert, or not the 11.
5.
I'll be asleep.
Gotta get through those ones first.
I'll be asleep by 11. Honestly, I'm gonna get ready for the 5. Robert's gonna wrap it up. Thanks, folks. We so much would prefer hearing your questions. So as we go through. As long as we're going to keep doing this, please send us questions and we'll focus on exactly what you want. Thanks, Robert.
And actually, I've been checking it. Thank you very much, Tim. Let you take off here. I have been checking this throughout the live stream. And if you leave any questions here, if we don't get it today, you just wait till tomorrow, because we're going to do this again in the morning and probably again in the evening. We're trying to make these on a regular basis for you so we can answer these questions to you directly here at First Coast News, not only on tropical systems, but tomorrow we're going to be talking about wildfires, recapping, the 1998 firestorms, also 2006 Lake Oak, swamp just north of us here. Goodness, Okefenokee. Big fires out there back in 06 and 07. I was actually stationed at Naval Station Mayport when that happened. I remember the smoke covering. We had to plot it and tell planes to fly around it. It was a whole hot mess. We're going to be talking about that tomorrow. That is Friday, Severe Weather Awareness Week. Of course, tropical systems are big ticket item here on the First Coast. We all know about it, and actually we have Tropical Weather Awareness Week that comes up in, I believe, April. So we're going to be talking about this leading up. And as you just seen there with that that graphic. Our average first storm is in mid-June, but we have had, I think, 5 of the last 7 years, we've had a named storm before June 1st. So the point is, we always stay weather aware, stay weather ready. You are watching this live stream, and I can't thank you enough for watching it with myself and our chief meteorologist, Tim Deegan here. You're staying weather alert, and that's the number one priority. So you're already ahead of the game here, here at Severe Weather Awareness Week. So as always, thanks for watching. I hope you stay safe out there and you enjoy the rest of your day. We got First Coast News at 5, 6, 7, and 11, as well as these live streams, not only in meteorology, but sprinkled throughout. We just had one with Jasmine Monroe talking about the Oscars, if you want to check that out here at FCN Plus. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.